Hello and welcome to the premiere of the Living Legacy series from Of the I Sing, American Heritage Through Song. I am Audrey Johnson, a classically trained opera singer and founder of the I Sing, and I am so grateful to have you all here today for the launch of this exciting series. During this time in which physical contact is so limited, it's wonderful to have these opportunities to come together virtually and from such vast distances. So as we go, I will really enjoy seeing where everybody is from. So as you all join in, just please feel free to chime in through this comment section so we can see where we're all coming from. So the mission of the I Sing is to bring American heritage to life through music, and a cornerstone of this mission is to support and champion contemporary American composers because they are the living legacy of our nation's musical heritage and culture. I especially love featuring this music when it's settings of American poetry because this brings our national treasury of literature to the forefront as well. I do believe deeply in our nation's music and poetry, and I am honored to be an ambassador of this music with the vision of bringing people together through the power of song. This series will give us all a chance to get to know these wonderful and important American artists, and I'll be featuring a different composer and one of their songs in each month's episode. You'll have the chance to ask questions during the interview, so please feel free to write in questions at any time. And now, without further ado, I'd love for you to join me in welcoming Chicago composer Ronald William Hill.
Hi, Audrey.
Hi there. Oh, it's so wonderful to have you. Ron and I go way, way back. And so to have Ron as the inaugural composer on this interview series just means the world to me. On Facebook this past week, I shared the story of how we met after your wife Karen and I struck up a conversation as complete strangers on a Chicago city bus. And this was over 10 years ago. This led to you sharing your songs with me. And it was really the beginning of something very special. And I'm really thrilled to have you today.
Thank you. I'm honored to be your first person on this event, and congratulations on the inaugural series here.
Well, thank you. Oh, gosh, I appreciate that. Well, and now I know everybody was dying to know all about you and get the inside scoop on what it's like to be a composer. But before we get started with those questions, I do have to brag about you just a little bit because I know that you will not do it on your own. So please allow me to. So I would love to share with y'all that Ron's music has been performed all over the world. He is the recipient of grant support through the Illinois Arts Council. He is a current nominee, a finalist actually, for the Ernst Bacon Memorial Award. This is through the American Prize. And he has an album that is soon to be released through the classical label Centaur Records. Additionally, Ron celebrated the orchestral premiere of his song cycle, Songs of Sac Prairie, with the Worcester Symphony in Ohio in February. So these are really exciting things that are going on, but I would actually like to go back to the very beginning to find out how you came to composing and what kind of music you write.
All right. Well, first of all, the kind of music that I do write currently, my specialty, I guess, is art song, which for anybody, just kind of a brief description of it could be, it's a classically oriented song based on a text, a poetic text that tries to bring together the atmosphere and the special meanings that words can have in poetry and the intent of the poet, and do it in such a way that it's quite a moving, it's an emotional type of experience. And that's what I love more than anything else. But I also write music for piano. I write some things that are even sort of pop sounding, mildly pop sounding. I write for strings. As Audrey said recently, I did this arrangement for full orchestra and singers, which was a first for me, and that was such a joy. The end product, it was the whole thing was a joy all the way through, but the end product hearing was wonderful. And well, those are the things I do right now.
That is, I love that. And thank you again so much. For those of us that are in the classical field, art song is, it's one of those vocabulary words that you learn in, 101. But I think for a lot of people, that's not necessarily something that we know about. So I really appreciate
Yeah.
your excellent way that you're sharing, about that with us, that we can learn, what that means. And art songs are wonderful. Just like Ron said, they really heighten poetry. So, maybe some famous composers you could go check out as well. Aaron Copland said a lot of Emily Dickinson. Ned Rorem said a lot of Walt Whitman. So it's a really beautiful way to bring, this tonal color of American musical sound and blend that with, in many cases, American poetry. It's just a win-win. It's a wonderful thing. And I'm so happy as a singer that there is so much of this music, and especially that Ron's favorite kind of composition is songwriting. So, Ron, I'd love to know from you. Talk to us a little bit, about how did this start? What were some of the catalysts for you early on
Okay.
that really drew you? Yeah.
Well, I had a very musical surroundings when I grew up. My grandmother was extremely musical, and she sang and performed. She played for church and the piano and the organ and things like that. And then my parents were both singers. They both, sang in the church choir and whatnot. And I would often sit with them as they would rehearse. And but I would sit at the piano for hours. My mother was very patient, I guess. She let me experiment with sounds, and she just sort of enjoyed me doing that, I guess, or at least she acted like she did. And but that's how like I got really inquisitive about how different things could sound, and always had that sort of thing going on in my thinking. Um, but the first very sort of odd thing that happened was I was mowing lawn one day, and like I would take turns with my sister and my dad and my mom mowing. We had a rather large lawn out on the farm, and one day when I was mowing, I heard this little tune in my head, and it was like, where did that come from? It was very odd. It's just this little tune. And I remember as soon as I was done with my writing, pushing the mower, I went back to the piano and wrote it down just so I would remember. But it was just kind of an odd thing to have this little tune. Um,
I love that. I
yeah,
think that's amazing. And don't they say, didn't they say John Lennon woke up with, some of the Beatles songs in his head? They just came just out of from nowhere. And that's
right,
so cool from such an early age that happened to you. And I also just want to speak to, just to kind of reflect back on what you were saying, your initial thoughts that you share when we talked to you about, how you came to composition. It started at home and it started in the church. And I just think that
right.
that's beautiful. That really speaks to, and you guys will hear just a little bit later one of Ron's songs. And I know immediately you'll just hear the beauty, the heart that's in it, just the pure spirit. It's just so gorgeous. And honestly, I'm not a bit surprised to hear your answers that you're saying to me, oh, it started with my family, with the church, with coming together in these really safe, supportive spaces, and
Yeah,
that it's just beautiful that has then led you to be able to create, and then now we're all benefiting from that through your music. So that is just wonderful.
thank you.
Anything about your, yeah, you're welcome. So about, your training and maybe the music that you received in school. I know, music education maybe back in the day looked a lot differently than it does now. So I'd love to know
Yeah.
from you, yeah, what that was like.
Well, I think I grew up. I was just thinking about this yesterday. I think I grew up in the heyday of when music really had its height in American public schools. And like there were band programs all over, wonderful band programs. There were choral programs, there were orchestra programs, I'm sure, even though I never saw violin until I was in high school. Um, where I lived, it was rural. You didn't have that sort of thing, right? Um, there were wonderful programs, and in particular, I had a choral teacher who, from the time I was in second grade all the way through graduating from high school. So this was a gentleman that, I mean, he loved different kinds of musical literature, and he wanted us to experience them. So we did all kinds of things, like being with him for a certain number of years. By the time I was in sixth grade or fifth grade, we had a fifth and sixth grade boys choir, and we sang parts of the Ceremony of Carols by Benjamin Britten, at the age of whatever it was, 11 or 12, and they were good. I mean, we did very well.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah, and then all through high school, I was like in a madrigal group, and we sang some major madrigal composers. Madrigal, maybe you can describe that better than.
Oh, sure. No, yeah, I was
Yeah,
just gonna. So, yeah, so a madrigal, that was a very, very common type of musical art form, especially in the medieval Renaissance periods. So in Europe, and so you'll hear these in, in Latin, in Spanish, in Italian, in French, in German, and all of the, in English as well, of course, and they are a cappella pieces. That's an important thing to remember. So they're a cappella pieces for a small ensemble, and
right,
it ranges just. Different pieces could be written for different voicings and for
right,
different numbers of voices that are also maybe recommended per part. So the
right,
fact that, so really what Ron is sharing here is, not only did he have a lot of a choral experience, but the a cappella, of course, that means unaccompanied, which means though those students really had to tune their ears, really listen to each other, even more so,
absolutely,
right? Yeah. I mean, of course, we still have to do that if we've got the accompaniment behind us, but really, we're really dependent on each other when it's an a cappella situation. So, and I just have to say, did
right.
we all hear this? He had the same music teacher from second grade until high school. That relationship, I just cannot imagine. That just sounds like a utopian environment there. I mean, the trust that was able to be built up, the momentum that you were able to maintain by having that
Yes,
relationship. I just can't imagine. And I know that we all talk about, oh, music and arts in the schools, it's so important, but we kind of, it's easy to talk about that in a kind of a theoretical way, and I hope
right.
that we can all learn from Ron's sharing his life experience here. This is a composer now, and he came from this environment of this very consistent, very important aspect of his education in a public
It
school in our
was.
country was through music. And now you'll see just one of his many, many pieces that he's written today, and we can just imagine the ripple effect that this education, that Ron's education has had. So I hope if there are any school administrators listening, I know that we're all very strapped right now for resources, but truly it is an extremely important thing. And
It is.
I'm sure so many of those students that were your classmates alongside you, maybe they didn't go into music, but certainly they were better students and better citizens, better people because of that consistent music component within their education. So
Absolutely,
I
and
love
and
that.
lifelong lovers of good music, of fine music, and appreciators, right, for their children and grandchildren. Now, they are, you know a good bunch of people that we all learn together, and they still support me and my endeavors and what I do, and I'm very appreciative to them for that. My local hometown crew.
Yeah, no, that's, and I love how you just said that we all learn together. And you guys will hear as well, within the music that I will be singing of Ron's later, there's a humility in it, there's a humanity in it. And I hope that even just right now from the few minutes that you've had sharing this time with Ron, that you can see this is the kind of person that he is. And we are just so fortunate that he is a composer so that he can channel this wonderful spirit into the music he writes. So,
Thank you.
oh, absolutely. This is just wonderful. So today I'll be singing your song, Raynor, and this is set to text by Wisconsin poet August Derleth. I know many of you may not know this poet. I guess I would personally say, to me, he was, Illinois has Carl Sandburg, Wisconsin has August Derleth, and he's known as the Thoreau of the Midwest. He came from a very small town called Sauk City in Wisconsin, and even though he was a Guggenheim Fellow and had multiple opportunities, mentors and things like that were coaching him to go to New York, go to the big city, you need to live where all of the action is. He said, you know what? No, I'm going to stay put. I'm going to stay in the home that I love, and this is what I love, and this is what I'm going to write about. So, if you all are in the mood for any, of that kind of literature, as we're all still home under quarantine, August Derleth has been compared with his works have been compared with that of Spoon River, just as one example. So it's that wonderful, Americana kind of thing. It's really beautiful. But I would love to know for you specifically, Ron, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about this poem, what it means to you, and maybe what inspired you to set it to music.
Okay. Yeah. Well, my father was actually took a course under him. It was called a farm short course, and included in the curriculum was regional literature, and August Derleth was the teacher, and this impressed my father very much. He was very much influenced and impressed by this man, and he would from time to time he would go into his file cabinet, and he had a couple of his books in there, and he'd bring out the books, and sometimes he would cut out a clipping of a newspaper article or something because he followed his life. He found him a rather fascinating person, right? And so I was just like, wow, he had a lot of attention on that. He had a lot of, interest in that. So one day, as I was growing up, I think I was still in high school, and I was bored on a summer day, and I decided, well, what the heck? What is this all about? So I went into that file cabinet and I pulled out the books and I started to read some of the poetry, and I was very impressed by what I read, and I found this a group of poems called Sac Prairie People, and they were just little very short poems. You could read them, slam bam. It was just like they could be very fast, but they seemed to have so much in them. And I found this particular poem, and I just thought it was so beautiful. It just had it was beautiful to read, and it was about a very, honest, wonderful individual, and you start thinking, well, there's a lot of wonderful, honest individuals out there, but he somehow captured it so much in this poem. And I started getting, musical ideas, with this poem and with another. And I just started playing around, because I was already kind of playing around with, listening to TV shows and things like that, where I turned the volume down and I would play, just create something to, just to see how that would go, because I found out that's what I like doing. And but this poem was the very first one of Derleth's poems that I finished. I actually dedicated it to my father, because I thought it was kind of a good description of my dad, actually. And so it's very personal that way for me. But it's a beautiful poem with just the rhythms and how things are expressed was just, to me, it was just so spot on. I had to put music to it.
Thank you for that. I just love how you express that, and the way that you go after these poems, and how you said, there's so many people like this, but August Derleth found a way to capture it.
Yeah.
And now we have that, and now this is something that we can all share and derive joy from. And thank you so much. I did know about this being dedicated to your father, but every time that you say that, I think, gosh, thank you for sharing this with us. That's such a dear and close, personal thing to your heart, and it's just beautiful that you are that you're able to create something from it and to let us all share in it with you. So before I sing this piece, would you mind actually reading the text for us?
Oh, I'd love to.
Oh, great.
Raynor. Raynor saw in every curve and line evidence of nature's ultimate design. Raynor saw in every buckwheat pod the undisputed mark of God. A simple but a happy man, as free at 21 as at 63. Raynor knew beyond a doubt what God was all about. This is God, he said of stone, only for his breath alone. Red-cheeked Raynor with his merry eyes had no patience with doubts or lies. He saw in every bird, seed, every inch of sod, evidence eloquent of God.
That's beautiful. Thank you. That's gorgeous. All right. Well, it is my pleasure now to sing this beautiful song for you. So this is Raynor with text by August Derleth, song by Ronald William Hill. Raynor saw in every curve and line evidence of nature's ultimate design. Raynor saw in every buckwheat pod the undisputed mark of God. A simple but a happy man, as free at 21 as at 63. Raynor knew beyond a doubt what God was all about. This is God, he said of stone, only for his breath alone. Red-cheeked Raynor with his merry eyes had no patience with doubts or lies. He saw in every bird, every seed, every inch of sod, evidence eloquent of God.
Nicely done, Audrey.
Well, thank you. I just love singing your music. I just have to say, it is really a joy. And for those of you that maybe haven't ever thought about this before, it really does take a lot of different components working together to create a successful song. It's different than just creating a poem by itself, and it's different than just creating some instrumental music. One of the things that I love really about Ron's music is that it's such a natural extension of the ebb and flow of how one would speak a phrase. So the way that he writes a melody just really rolls just so naturally, which is a joy to sing, but I feel that it also conveys text especially well. And another thing, and guys, think about this maybe the next time you're, listening to a piece of music, driving, listening to your favorite song. If you've never thought about, the high note of this song, it's on an open vowel like an ah or an o or an something like that, that makes it a lot easier to sing than say like an e. Those are all, some other things that are in a composer's toolbox that they are going to utilize to have the most success when setting text. So those are some big things that I really love, especially about singing Ron's music. I really feel he is one of the greats. I always have said to him, the first time I heard his music, that as sad that I was that Aaron Copland is no longer with us, we'll be all right because we have composers like Ronald Hill. So I just really can't say enough about how much I love this guy's music, I guess. And Ron, you've shared with me before this idea, your process when you write a song, how much time you spend with that text. Would you mind sharing a little bit about that? If it's not too intimate of a something to share, we would love to hear about that.
Well, yeah. Well, what I do is I have some notes here to tell you, but when I choose a poem, I usually I'll choose a poem that for me, it has to be personal to me. It has to move me. Like I don't care if it has anybody else's the consensus of anybody else. That this is one of the world's finest poems, or this is whatever. It's like I personally, it's my mission, just like it's your mission with American music and American composers and so forth, the American story. I also look for American composers. I'm like, I don't need to be the 250th person to write something to a Shakespeare sonnet. He doesn't need any more publicity. He doesn't need the help. He doesn't need the accolade as well as our own current people do. I mean, Derleth has, passed away, I believe, in 1971. Um, so he's not exactly current at this point, but he's still modern enough to me that, deserves more recognition. Um, but other poets, I choose their poems because I think they're wonderful poems written by current people, and I want to support them. But so in other words, I have that first. But then what I do is I work the poem over. I learn the poem. It's really important for me to learn the poem to to actually make sure I get the words defined and get the full meaning of what the author is trying to say. Because poets can use words in such wonderful ways, and put a certain adjective in a certain place as opposed to in some other place where it would not have been as effective, and things like that. It's just it's a brilliant sort of process, I think, that poets go through. um, and so what I do is I learn the poem, and I make sure I really get it, and then I take it out with me in life. I take it out for walks. I have a wonderful process. To me, like, taking a walk is just the best thing you can do in life. It's just like, it's invigorating, but it's also, so many things can get worked out by walking, and getting space and seeing the world around you, and all of a sudden whatever you got going on in your head, all the noise and whatnot, can just kind of go away, and you're just like, oh, there's the real world, and I'm in it, and I can create something here, or whatever. um, but many times, like, the walking will allow me to, I'll sing it myself. I'll sing it, and then I'll try different ways. And it's an experimental thing. I'm not a person, I've had very few instances of instant masterpiece or something. It's like not in my repertoire at all. It's hammer and tongs pretty much for me, but I'll go over it as a singer, like, does this note, should it be here going to here, or would it be best from here to here? And like, at some point it'll kind of click with me. I go, oh, that's it. That's it. and and so it's like, however it resolves, and you'll get all kinds of things that'll happen when you write music, and you'll get stuck. You just have total stops where, like, I can't go beyond this point. I don't know why I can't do this stanza at all. I've had this recently with my, you know, and you have to just keep at it. Just keep experimenting, do something else, come back to it, keep experimenting, just keep at it, and you will resolve it. And as I told one of my other singer friends that Audrey knows well, Mr. William Powers, the other day, I said, the best way for me to get something done when I'm in that sort of situation is to set a date for the performance. And all of a sudden, you will become very efficient with your time. And sure enough, it was working.
I think that's true for so much in life, and it's interesting just to know that that's true, as well for a more creative process like that. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
that's wonderful. And just to kind of recap some of the things that Ron just said that I think are excellent. Remember, he was a singer. He did do madrigals, did chorus. So to have that background really allows him to, like you said, he'll walk around, and as things come to him, he'll sing the melody that he's writing. And that you're so sensitive, and I really thank you, because this is not always the case. We don't always have the most gracious vocal lines to sing. Of course, that can't happen 100% of the time, but certainly in Ron's music, there are, those moments are the vast majority. And I just think that's such an important thing as well, not only for a singer being comfortable, but again, as you say, you are there to lift up that text. And
Yes.
if the singer isn't comfortable with that vocal line, that text is really going to be what suffers, and then that connection with the audience as well. So I just
Yes.
really think that those are excellent things that I know all singers will appreciate hearing from you. So that's no, that's wonderful. Well, I think we are at the tail end here, but I know I did have one question from one of my subscribers from Of the I Sing, and this
Yes.
person really wanted to know from you if you could choose one piece of advice that you would give young composers today. Well, what do you feel like that would be?
Well, um, I sometimes have trouble with like questions that ask for one or like what's your favorite or something like that. Um, so I'll give one and then maybe I'll give a second one if that would work too.
Of course, absolutely.
Um, yeah. Um, First of all, um, it's like when I'm going for something, when I'm writing, I want to make sure that I don't go for second best. When I have a concept, because I think writing a song when you're inspired to actually write and create a song or any kind of music, you have a kind of a concept, right? Like a real core, it's like a core idea. It's like the actual idea. And that idea, if you want to express it, if you were inspired enough to do something to express it, then make sure that you actually do it and create that. It's so important for your own personal welfare almost. You know what I mean? It's like it's something that's in you, and you feel like you need to share that, exchange that with others. And if you're not happy with what you've created, then you're going to be less likely to share. And it's a lot more fun to share than to sit on it. I can tell you because I sat on my music, a lot of it, for a long time. I was a bad boy.
No, I mean it's scary.
but I, but it's like I was a little bit like, a bit scared of, reactions of people or whatever because it's a personal thing. And but when I did write something, I made sure that it was what I wanted to say. Um, like I get very specific emotions and concepts from poetry that inspires me. They're very specific, and you have to find the comparable sounds and rhythms that bring these out. Um, so it's like it's very intimate to you. It's like it's intimate to me, and when you try it, it will be intimate to you. So it's like that's that's how I like choose something in the first place. It has to have that experience thing. Um, the other thing is like that I want to say is that when you're writing music, you're making a communication. It's first and foremost, it's a communication of something, of something in you or something that you observe, something that you want to see in the future, something that was in the past that you don't want to have happen anymore, whatever. I mean, whatever the subject is about, it is a communication. So, who is going to receive your communication? It's your audience. So you have to be aware of your audience. You have to be able to um, think like an audience as well. In other words, you have your viewpoint as a composer. I'm saying this, right? But there's also, you have to be able to it's like a hat that you wear, for a specific task, right? Put that hat away for a minute. Put on the hat of the person that's sitting there in the audience. What are they hearing? And are they enjoying what you wrote? Could they enjoy it better in some way? Did you miss the point? Did like what you're trying to say, does it not really come across as the audience? And if so, you should look at that, fix that while you still have time to do that.
Wow, that is such great advice. I love that, and honestly, I think for any artist, for honestly, for almost anything that we do, that is so important to put in that, to put on that hat, like you say, and, to really sit on the other side of things. And
Right.
I definitely can tell that you have done that, listening to your music and
Yeah.
performing it. Absolutely,
Yeah.
because really it is so clear. I feel like you really absolutely have channeled those emotions in that real direct way, so that I mean, I can at least say for me personally, I'm definitely getting those things very clearly. So that is an excellent piece of advice. I cannot imagine what it would be like to be a composition major in school, but I could definitely see that aspect kind of going out the window sometimes
Yeah.
if if people are just overwhelmed by classes. They're
Yeah.
learning so much, and learning about other composers, learning about composition itself, and maybe forgetting about the fact that at the end of the day, it's all about that connection you're going to make with that
Right.
audience, and really keeping that real and keeping that close to you.
Well,
I think that's
also, I mean,
excellent.
just so they know, just so the people here know, I was not a composition major. I was a music education major. I didn't study composition as such. I studied composition from listening carefully to things that I performed, either instrumentally. I played oboe as well. I played piano. So I have different things that I played, and I played a lot of wonderful music and sang a lot of wonderful music, and saw how they created their effect. And that's how I learned my composition, to tell you the truth. Not that you couldn't be a composition major, but I wasn't in that totally academic uh, cone, or whatever you want to call it. Because I know, as when I went to college, it was at the end of the 20th century, or the middle to the end of the 20th century, and um, a lot of the things that I heard from composers at that time, I felt like maybe they had a good time. It's like, it was as good for you as it was for you, as we say. It's like, but what about the person? Did anybody in the audience actually get it, or like, did it connect with them? I don't know. I had a lot less connection than I wanted. I was dying for connection that way with new music, and it often missed me totally. It went way out there somewhere. So anyway.
No, I have to agree. I mean, I certainly don't want to, to be disparaging about any type of music,
Yeah.
but I do understand, definitely I think we can all remember an experience where we've listened to a piece of music and thought, well, that sounded very scholarly, or, what an academic display, but did it really move you as a person? Maybe not. And I
Yeah.
love that for you, that is the ultimate test
Yeah.
of success for a piece. And I certainly think, as a listener, that definitely, that's really what music is about, is making that connection. And also, I hope that everybody did hear that Ron was not a composition major. So, music education was his major. And from that education and his talent, he was able to then, go on to become a composer. But I hope that might be a little bit liberating, for many of you listening,
Yeah.
that maybe you are, a music education major, a music teacher, and of course, that doesn't stop you from sharing. If you have that compositional instinct and drive in you, if you have that to share, I really hope you do, because as we've just heard with Ron's gorgeous music, we're all better for it. It really enhances the world that we live in. So
Thank you.
yes. Oh gosh, absolutely. Well, Ron, I just want to say thank you so much for being willing to be a part of this today. Thank all of you
My
so much
pleasure.
as well for listening. I hope that you all learned a lot and enjoyed getting kind of the inside view of what it's like to be a composer. And join me next month when I will be featuring another artist. But again, thank you, Ron. This was absolutely wonderful.
Very welcome, and I would appreciate hearing from anyone. We'll put my an email address. You can write to me if you would like. My website is under construction, so at present not the greatest place to send to. So, but if you'd like to write to me, ask questions, whatever, I'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely, and I'll make sure that happens.
All
All
right,
right,
thank
my
you.
friend. Thank you so very much. I look forward to making music with you again very soon.
Me too.
All righty. Bye.
Bye bye.